I haven't done this for a couple of years, but I think it's a subject that is worth repeating every couple of years, and that is why I believe the King James Bible is the Word of God. And I know we believe it, we take a stand on it, we're unashamed of that, but I think it's good every once in a while just to say why. And I want our young people to grow up and have an answer for why. Why do we not use other Bibles? And so it'll be material that we've covered before, maybe some new material, maybe look at some verses from other versions. And so we'll start that, not this Wednesday, I think next Wednesday we'll do that. But tonight I want to cover a subject that I've covered before. And tonight, not sure exactly how this will go. I've got a lot of things to say, and so just as I get into it, I'll just cut out and add and just kind of play it by ear a little bit. I'm probably going to end up offending about half of you tonight. And so I don't know if you are the half, but it'll be some of you. And so I thought that since I am going to offend somebody, I might as well go ahead and start before I even read. Tomorrow, national holiday, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, I think is what we celebrate. Great hero. And every town in America's got a school named after him, got a street named after him. Now we've got a national holiday for him. And if you listen to the media, he's the greatest hero of the 20th century, champion of civil rights. If you go to public school, you think that he is as great as George Washington. That's what the public school education do for you. And there are some things about him that is just a matter of fact that the media won't tell you about. And he wasn't born Martin Luther King, for one thing. He was born Martin King, and then they added Luther when he was 5 years old. But that's beside the point. Received his PhD from Boston University. And in 1991, there was an academic review board that reviewed his dissertation. And they come to the conclusion that much of his dissertation was plagiarized. He was a plagiarist is what he was. That means stealing somebody else's material. In fact, Boston University Library has his dissertation on file. You can go look at it, and they have attached a letter to it that basically states as much. That says that a lot of this was plagiarized, but a lot of his advisors coming up were members of the Young Communist League or the Communist Party USA. It has been claimed, I don't know that he was a member of the Communist Party, but he was very sympathetic to communists and the Communist Party. In 1963, the Attorney General at that time was Robert Kennedy, and he instructed the FBI to wiretap his phones because of his ties with the communists. And what they found out is that him traveling, this reverend traveling all over the country, spending nights with prostitutes in motel rooms all over the country. And in fact, his last night before his death, he spent with two women. Neither one of them were his wife. And they won't tell you this in the news media. And some of you act like you don't want to hear it now, but that's fine. But anyway, tomorrow, enjoy the holiday. Womanizing, plagiarizing, communist sympathizing. I don't even think he was a Christian. He never claimed to be born again. Denied that Jesus rose from the dead. As I certainly don't claim him as a reverend, and certainly not as a hero. You say, well, you're racist. It has nothing to do with race. I don't care if he's purple. It makes no difference to me. But it's just amazing. It's amazing how the media idolizes somebody. And so I just thought we'd get off on a good start tonight. Well, 2 Samuel chapter 13. 2 Samuel 13 and verse 1. It came to pass after this that Absalom, the son of David, had a fair sister, whose name was Tamar, and Amnon, the son of David, loved her. Amnon was so vexed that he fell sick for his sister Tamar, for she was a virgin. And Amnon thought it hard for him to do anything to her. But Amnon had a friend, whose name was Jonadab, the son of Shimeah, David's brother. And Jonadab was a very subtle man. And he said unto him, that is to Amnon, why art thou, being the king's son, lean from day to day, but thou not tell me? And Amnon said unto him, I love Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister. So that would make him her his half-sister. And Jonadab said unto him, lay thee down on thy bed, and make thyself sick. And when thy father cometh to see thee, say unto him, I pray thee, let my sister Tamar come and give me meat, and dress the meat in my sight, that I may see it and eat it at her hand. So Amnon lay down and made himself sick. And when the king was come to see him, Amnon said unto the king, I pray thee, let Tamar my sister come and make me a couple of cakes in my sight, that I may eat at her hand. Then David sent home to Tamar, saying, go now to thy brother Amnon's house and dress him meat. So Tamar went to her brother Amnon's house, and he was laid down, and she took flour and kneaded it, and made cakes in his sight, and did bake the cakes. And she took a pan and poured them out before him, but he refused to eat. And Amnon said, have out all men from me. And they went out every man from him. We'll read some more here in a little bit. But I want to spend some time tonight preaching to our young people on the subject of purity. Of purity. I preached from this text on April the 4th, or April 14, 2010. And back in February of 2015, I preached 2 Sunday nights on the subject of dating. So I've dealt with this subject before, and I'll say some things about dating tonight, but that's not the entire message. So it's not new material, but I don't know that I have preached it to these young people. And it's a subject that I believe that needs to be emphasized every so often. Your purity is a gift from God, and it ought to be jealously guarded. One day, if God allows you to get married, you will give your innocence, your virginity to a special person, and that ought to mean something to you. It's not just physical purity, but mental, emotional, spiritual purity. In 2 Samuel 11 and 12, David has committed adultery with another man's wife. He has concocted this elaborate scheme to cover up his sin. But the cover-up didn't work, and he goes so far as to have Uriah deliberately placed in a spot in the battle where he would be killed. The sin is still uncovered. God sends Nathan, the prophet, to David to confront him, and David confesses. I believe that David repents, and God forgives him. But there's still a price to pay for sin, and David is going to pay that price through his children. In the following chapters, chapter 13 through chapter 19 or 20, David's family falls apart. A son rapes a sister, a brother murders a brother, a son rebels, overthrows the throne, and then is killed. And Nathan had pronounced a fourfold judgment, and David realizes that through his children. I cannot imagine anything more terrible than that. And what David learns is that whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. 2 Samuel tells you the story of David and Absalom. Absalom is David's third-born son, and he's behind Amnon in line for the throne, but he and his father have a strained relationship. Absalom becomes a rebel. He overthrows the throne, takes the throne. David has to run for his life. Absalom ends up hanging by his hair in a tree, and David mourning for his death. And then the chapter of the book also tells us about David and Amnon. Amnon is the firstborn son of David. He has a half-sister named Tamar. They share the same father but different mothers. And in verse number 2, you find out that Amnon has an evil, lustful heart, and his lust is turned toward Tamar. And he fantasized about her, and he became infatuated with her, and it was all that he could think about. And a young person can have a corrupt and a perverted mind. Amnon seemed like an innocent enough young man, but in his heart are all of these evil fantasies that nobody can see. And the Bible says that Amnon thought it hard to do anything to her. Now that doesn't mean that he is struggling with what's right and wrong. It's not that he has a struggle with the morality of what's in his heart, but no, Tamar was a virgin, and virgin daughters are protected and guarded, so the opportunity to be with her would not be there. He's going to have to figure out a way to get with her. He's going to have to be cunning and scheming. There's 5 words in verse number 3. Every teenager ought to underline these words in your Bible. But Amnon had a friend. I'm going to tell you the story would have been a whole lot different if Amnon had not had that friend. But he's got a friend, and the friend is Jonadab. And Jonadab was a subtle man. That means slick, it means sly, it means cunning. It is this friend who hatches the plan that would get Amnon alone with Tamar and give him the one chance that he would need to violate her. It is this friend who encourages him in his desire and puts it all together. I have said this before and I say it again, that the two greatest influences on a young person are your friends and your music. I know there's other influences, but I'm going to tell you right now that if your music is not right, you'll not live a godly life. If your music is not right, you don't want to live a godly life. If you're not circumspect in your music and in your friends, show me your music playlist, show me your friends, I'll tell you what's in your heart if I don't know anything else about you. If you'll look down in verse number 8, Tamar goes and she prepares this meal. In verse 10, Amnon says to Tamar, bring them into the chamber, and so Tamar does. In verse 11, she had brought them unto him to eat. He took hold of her and said unto her, come lie with me, my sister. And she answered him, nay, my brother, do not force me, for no such thing ought to be done in Israel. Do not thou this folly, and I, whither shall I cause my shame to go? As for thee, thou shalt be as one of the fools in Israel. Now therefore I pray thee, speak unto the king, for he will not withhold me from thee. Howbeit he would not hearken unto her voice, but being stronger than she, forced her and lay with her. She comes to the apartment under an innocent request. She thinks he grabs her, he makes lewd commands. She resists as long as she can. She tries to get him to reason, but he overpowers her and he rapes her is what happens. Verse number 15. Then Amnon hated her exceedingly, so that the hatred wherewith he hated her was greater than the love wherewith he had loved her. And Amnon said unto her, arise and be gone. At first Amnon thought that he loved Tamar, but after that awful deed, he hates her. And now he don't want to have anything to do with her, and he orders his servants to get her out of the house. And girls, I'll tell you something tonight. I don't care how much a guy tells you that he loves you. If he disrespects you and palls you, he doesn't love you. And a teenage girl may think that that is his way of expressing his love. No, that's his way of expressing his lust is what it is. He doesn't love her. She says in verse 16, she says, there is no cause. This evil in sending me away is greater than the other that thou didst unto me. Tamar is a virgin no longer, and so now she's not going to be a good prospect for marriage in that day and age. By the way, it's not her fault. She's not at blame for anything. She shouldn't take the blame for it. There's nothing in the text to suggest that she was loose, flirty, floozy, seductive, anything like that. And when that happens to a young lady, it's not her fault. There's no shame there. But what Amnon should have done is he should have been a man, take responsibility, and now take care of her. But here's an innocent young girl who's not innocent anymore. Here's a shattered home with unthinkable things that have happened in this home. Here's a rebellious young man who has raped his half-sister. It is an ugly, ugly scene. And it tells you what lust will do. Lust will destroy everything that it touches. And the drive is inside of every young person. And it will be awakened in its time. And it must be harnessed, and it must be kept in check. And if you think and look and watch and listen based on the lust inside of you, you're going to ruin a lot of lives, including your own. That's why Jesus said in Matthew chapter 5, that I tell you that if a man looks upon a woman to lust after her, that he has committed adultery with her already in his heart. And what the Lord does is He elevates lust in the heart to the same level as the physical act of adultery. And men tend to think that well, it's just in my mind. I'm not acting upon it. I'm not doing anything. It's just I'm not hurting anybody. And as long as it is contained in the heart and not turned loose out on a fantasy thin, it is okay. I'm going to tell you something. Lust is nothing to play with. If you play with it, you are going to get burned. The strongest men in the Bible fell to lust. David fell to it. Samson fell to it. Solomon fell to it. The Gospels tell us the story of Herod and Herodias. Herod the king, he visited his brother Philip and he became infatuated with his wife. And though he and Herodias were both married, he still seduced her and he married her. It is a marriage built on lust, certainly not on love. And then Herodias brings her daughter Salome into this thing. And Herod's dirty heart lusts after her. And in a drunken stupor, he has her come in and dance seductively and sensually. And I'll say some things tonight that are a little bit plain, but I want you to understand me, all right? I don't want you may walk away and say, I don't agree. I don't want you to walk away and say, I didn't understand. All right? So I'll say some things that you know, maybe you wouldn't say. Men typically lust after the physical body of a woman. Sit in a public place, sit in a mall, sit in a restaurant, and watch men when women walk by. Right? And when a man says that it doesn't affect me, a beautiful woman doesn't affect me, he's either a liar or he's gay. One or the other. Which by the way, this is why Paul said in 2 Timothy 2, in like manner, let women adorn themselves in modest apparel. A godly woman will not want to dress so as to have men lust after her. She has no desire to be stared at and whistled at and gawked at and admired sexually and lustfully by strange men. Amen. That is why your dress ought to be high enough. It ought to be long enough. It ought to be loose enough. You don't have to wear a sack dress. You don't have to dress like the Amish. You can be fashionable, but you ought to go overboard in dressing modestly. If you dress so as to incite the lust in men's heart, God holds you accountable for that. By the way, a preacher ought to be able to say it, draw the standard, and leave it alone. That's what you ought to be able to do. But about every 2 or 3 years, you got to get up and rant and rave and blow a hole in it again. So ought to help me a little bit, all right? A godly teenage girl will not fight against her parents over her dress. Simply won't. And if you're always pushing the boundaries, and if you want to come out of the house with tight, low cut, see, look right here, look right here. See through, I tell you that you have a problem with your heart. Yeah. Teenage girl comes out of the house in skin tight blue jeans, yoga pants. You've got to be kidding me. Halter straps where you can see the bra straps. When I grew up, we hid our underwear. We did. We didn't show that. And it ought to be. Men lust after the physical body of a woman. Women typically lust after romance. That's why men don't read romance novels. I hope you don't. That's why women watch soap operas. Huh? And God help you if you do. You see, women desire the emotional, men desire the physical. And here's what happens. Teenage girls lust to be lusted after, which is why they dress as sexy as they dare. Amen. Amen. And a godly girl will never be flirty, will never be loose, will never be sensual. Amen. Amen. Now here's what lust does. Here's what it does. It destroys sacred relationships. I don't know how many thousands, if not millions, of homes have been destroyed by adultery. Hey guys, if you never get caught in your pornography, it still does damage to your marriage. You can't love your wife like she deserves and like you should if you're fulfilling some sick fantasy on a computer in the middle of the night. Amen. It destroys sacred relationships. What lust does is it destroys sane reasoning. Samson is a powerful man. He has great potential, but he has a lifelong problem with lust. His first wife is a woman from Philistia. After he gets married, the father keeps her in her house. He goes down to get her, finds out the father has married her off to another woman, offers Samson the younger daughter. His next wife is a harlot from Gaza. Then he marries Delilah, another Philistine. Delilah is a beautiful woman with an ugly heart. And after 4 tries, she finally gets Samson to reveal the secret of his strength. And with his head in her lap, Delilah betrays him and turns him over to the enemy. And Samson goes down in history as a fool because of his lust. Lust destroys spiritual reality. A young man or a young woman gets the fire of God in his heart, and he has a burning desire for holiness and a zeal for God. But that natural flame of lust begins to burn in his soul or her soul. And if that lust is not quenched, it will put out the fire of God, and it will destroy the spiritual vitality that he so desperately longs for. I'm just trying to say, by way of introduction, this is a dangerous thing is what it is. And somebody needs to tell our young people, we ought not hide our head in the sand. Now, where this is played out is in the modern scene of dating. Now, somebody says, how in the world can you be against dating? How are you supposed to get married if you don't date? Okay, and I'll help you with that tonight. But I would tell you that the way that the world does dating, I'm against. Okay? And I've preached this here before, and so I won't say it all again. Here's what I'm not against. I'm not against boys and girls being attracted to each other. Okay? I am for that. I am against junior high and high school kids who've lost their virginity. I am against that. Okay? I am against jealousy and broken hearts and cold spirituality and lost innocence that is accompanied by so much dating. I am against that. So here's what I believe. When young people are coming up and boys first discover girls and girls trying to get boys to discover them, and they're coming through the junior high years and hormones are raging and then high school years. So what's the standard? What should happen? So this is me personally, all right? This is what I believe. First of all, I don't believe that there is any need for dating in junior high years. None. Right? I don't believe in flirting, note passing, sitting next to each other on the school bus, sweetheart banquets, no girls talking about cute boys. I don't believe in none of that. Now, I hope that you have noticed each other by then. I hope. But it is too early for a boyfriend. It is too early for a girlfriend. Maybe you can get together in a group together. You know, everybody go bowling together, something like that. But no romance. I'm against all of that. I'm against sweetheart banquets. I'm sure every school's going to have one. I'm against it. I'm not against dancing. I'm okay with dancing. I think you have the guys on Tuesday night, have the girls on Thursday night. You're okay. All right? I'm against any dating relationship. Then I am against any serious dating relationship during senior high years. Now, a serious dating relationship is a boy and a girl who have an artificial commitment of boyfriend and girlfriend. They write deeply emotional love letters to each other, call each other at night, texting each other at 1 o'clock in the morning, spending excessive amounts of time together. There's nothing wrong with a boy liking a girl and wanting to know her. Nothing wrong with a group setting. But I think that's as far as it should go in high school. Now here's what the world says, all right? Here's what the world says. You're looking at me like you're an idiot, but I know what I'm talking about. Here, the world says to teen boys, here's what you ought to do. Find somebody of the opposite sex that you think is sexy and you are attracted with and get intimate with that person. And when you tire of that person, drop her and find somebody else. Tell the second girlfriend the same things that you told the first girlfriend. Take as much physical liberty with her as she will allow you to. And after you have done this 5 or 6 times, you will have played the field long enough to know the kind of girl that you want to marry. That's what the world says. It is a worldly philosophy, has no basis in Scripture. Here's what that is. That is training ground for divorce. So all you're doing is you are practicing divorce. We have an artificial commitment. We're going to swap jackets, but when we break up, then we've got to divide the property again. We have everything except the kids to worry about, right? Amen. Dating. Here's why I'm against dating. Here's why I'm against the modern dating scene, all right? Here's why. Is dating provides a temptation for sexual immorality. It is a playground for temptation. Because the more comfortable that two people get with each other, the more liberties they will take with each other. Once you open up your soul to a person, it's a little thing to open your body up to that person. Every teenage boy with a girlfriend wants to touch her. All right? He may succeed in keeping his hands off, but inside of him, the desire is burning. And the closer she lets him get emotionally, the more the fire burns. 1 Corinthians 6 and verse 18, flee fornication. Every sin that a man doeth is without the body. He that committeth fornication sinneth against his own body. 1 Thessalonians 4, this is the will of God, even your sanctification, that ye should abstain from fornication. Dating provides an avenue for temptation that no teenager should be facing, and very few teenagers are able to resist. Right. I don't believe that a dating couple should sit so close that their thighs touch, because it incites lust.
You're right.
We're okay. I'm going to tell you something. When a boy sits so close to a girl that they're touching, he's not thinking about that touch. He's thinking about the next one. What would the next touch be like? They may be only holding hands. He's thinking, what would it be like to put my arm around her? They may only have their arms around each other hugging. He's thinking, how am I going to get to the kiss? Now, I'm not saying that every boy's a pervert. Please understand, not. Okay? But I used to be a teenage boy. And the Bible says, can a man take fire in his bosom and his clothes not be burned? Can one go upon hot coals and his feet not be burned? So he that goeth into his neighbor's wife, whosoever toucheth her, shall not be innocent. I'm just saying that dating provides a temptation for sexual impurity. Here's the second thing. Dating promotes a spirit of adolescent independence from the parents. Most dating couples don't want parents involved. Don't want you around. The relationship is developed in as much secrecy as possible. Right? That's why they talk alone in the corner where nobody can hear them. That's why they write private notes and pass them, because they don't want their parents to read. That's why they want to walk over there by the wood, be away from everybody else. Right? It promotes that spirit of independence. And instead of being a wise authority figure, the parents are viewed as busybodies who's intruding into their private life. And they develop the attitude that parents are good for food and shelter and clothing, but don't check my iPhone. Right? Teenage dating takes the responsibility out of the father's hands. I don't have time to preach on that tonight. And it turns it over to sex-driven, lust-filled, hormone-charged, infatuated teenagers. Promotes a spirit of... I'll tell you a third thing. I'll move along because I can tell you enjoying this. Dating emphasizes intimacy without commitment. You see, when a boy and girl enter into an exclusive dating relationship, it is expected that emotional intimacy grows as the relationship develops. They may be from strong Christian homes. They may sing in the youth choir. They may refrain from physical intimacy. They may not even kiss, but they open their hearts and their emotions to one another. And a girl will tell her boyfriend things about herself that she won't tell her friends. And a boy will share his most inner thoughts and his most inner feelings with his girlfriend that he won't even tell her parents. There is a natural desire for intimacy, But intimacy is a gift that God has given to us, and intimacy is the reward of commitment. That's what it is. There's something about a girl, when a girl has a boyfriend, she gives a part of her heart to him. What she does. She becomes emotionally involved. And when he breaks up with her, she can't take that part of her heart back. It's gone. And the next guy, she gives a little part of her heart to him too, hoping it works out. And after you've gone through the process 3 or 4 times, then she walks down the aisle and she wants to give all of her heart to the man she loves. But she can't. That's why, hey girls, that's why there are 3 words that you ought to be so careful of. I love you. We ought to be careful of those words. Don't be too quick to utter those words. This happened with Jacob when he was courting Anna, and I liked it, and so I put the stipulation on Andrew. When Andrew came to me and he wanted to court Megan, and the difference between dating and courting, dating is being all dressed up with nowhere to go. Courting has marriage in view. Okay? And so he came and he wanted to court Megan, and they started talking, and then it got serious. And so I talked to him a little bit, and I put 2 stipulations on Andrew. Here they were. Don't touch her. Don't put a hand on her. Don't touch her. And here's the second one. No, I love you until you put a ring on her finger. Until you're willing to make the commitment and put a ring on her finger. Now, to be honest with you, they're both sinners. I doubt they, who knows if they abide it. Who knows? I don't know. See, here's the thing about it. Every step that you make in a relationship, you can never go back. If you're just friends and then you become dating and you break up, you never go back to just being friends. If you're dating and you get engaged and then you break up, you don't come back. If you cross the barrier of kissing, you can never stop and say, all right, we're not going to do that anymore. Every line that you cross, you can never come back across that line. Here's why I'm against dating, and I didn't mean just to preach the whole thing on dating. Dating is a distraction to spiritual growth. And I've seen it happen. A boy gets on fire for God, and he gets a girlfriend. And she consumes every thought. And a girl gets a boyfriend, and everything takes a back seat to him. And they may not even do anything wrong in the relationship. But the relationship consumes them at too early of an age, and it distracts them from spiritual matters. And here's what happens. May it never happen here. But a girl will start dating a boy, and she knows he is not strong spiritually. He comes to church and he has a Christian home, but in their private moments, he is carnal. He never talks about God or Jesus. He never reads his Bible. He never prays. You never see him on the altar. He says that he is saved. He doesn't have a strong desire to seek God. And she lets her emotions override her logic, and she will excuse his lack of spirituality and tell herself that she can influence him. A boy likes a girl, and she's so pretty and so worldly. And she's flirty and she's loose. And he knows she would never like a prude, so he determines not to be a prude. Huh? And he's been taught differently by his parents. But he takes on a worldly demeanor so he can have a cheap, floozy girlfriend. 2 godly teenagers in the youth group start liking each other. There's nobody there to keep them in check. Their romance blossoms and blooms, and they become inseparable. And they're always off in the corner by themselves, always whispering, always texting, always saying inappropriate things, always talking about how they love each other. They're always inappropriate with each other, thinking it's okay because we love each other. But a sensual appetite destroys a spiritual appetite. When you eat dessert before the main meal, you don't have any appetite for the main meal. When you feed the sensual, you don't have any appetite for the spiritual. And when lovesick kids feed the sensual, they'll not hunger and thirst after righteousness. So here's what I'm saying tonight, is that the modern dating scene doesn't square up with the Bible. You will not find one example in the Bible of a young man and a young woman becoming intimately involved unless and until he was ready to marry her. Only when that young man is thinking of marriage should he then pursue a relationship with that girl. And what a wonderful thing. This is old-fashioned, I know. This is 1800 stuff. What a wonderful thing for a girl to stand at an altar and to wear a right dress and not lie about it, and stand there with a pure body and a pure heart, and to be able to give her whole heart to her husband. What a wonderful thing for that couple to stand at that altar and share that first kiss at that altar when they get married. What a wonderful thing to go into that marriage without that emotional baggage of past romances and devastating breakups and sexual impurity. What a wonderful thing. And I hope that you have that desire. So let me give you some help. Let me give you some help here. All right, write this down if you think you want to think about it later on. So when should you date? How do you do it? How do you do it? Here it is, number one. Only when you are ready to get married. Only when you are ready to get married. Now you may develop a friendship, you may develop an interest, but I'm talking about that exclusive relationship. And it doesn't mean that you're going to marry the first girl that you date, but the purpose of courting is to find a mate. You may not find her the first time you try. That ought to be the goal. In the Bible, the only reason for a young man and a young woman to get in that relationship is for it to lead to marriage. There was no romantic relationship just for the pleasure of romance. Only when you're ready to get married. Hey, here's the second one. Boy, you really ought to watch this. Be very selective. That's why I preach this tonight. Every teenager, you ought to sit down and you ought to make a list of do's and don'ts. This is what I will have. This is what I will not have in a mate. And it needs to be made before you get involved, so your emotions are not involved in this thing. And you ought to make this. This is my criteria. This is it. This is it. Now I'm going to caution you. You can make the criteria so strong that even God can't find somebody to meet the list. Okay? But you ought to have a criteria. I knew a girl, used to go here, never married, and she had a criteria. She had a long list. And she never married. And I don't think it had anything to do with the list. I think it had to do with the combat boots that she wore. I think that was part of it. She had a list. On her list, here was something on her list. He must have a Bible name. Well, maybe that's what you want. Fine. I think it would be better to have a Bible life instead of a Bible name. Right? I don't care if he's named Hercules. How does he live? What's his life like? Amen. Every unmarried, and this message is not gone like I thought. But every unmarried young person ought to make a vow to God that I will not date for one moment, for 1 minute, for one date any person who does not exhibit a sincere, consistent walk with God. And you don't try to convince yourself that somebody is a believer just because they walk the walk or come to the church. If you have any doubts, come ask me. I'll tell you what I think. Yeah, that's what I think. And by the way, girls, I'm trying to help you tonight. Don't make the mistake that just because a young man carries a Bible and shouts in the youth choir means he would make a good husband. Okay? Because sometimes a girl with a lot of, boy, I'm really helping you tonight. Sometimes a girl with a lot of spirituality but not much sense falls in love with what she perceives the most spiritual boy in the youth group because she surrendered her life to be a preacher's wife. He's going to be the next Jack Hyles, all right? And man, he can really shout. Now, never mind that he's lazy. And never mind that he has a temper, and he has a problem with anger, and he's rude, and he don't ever shower, but he does shout in the youth choir. Okay? Set some guidelines down. I wish you'd write this down. Every date is a possible mate. Every date is a possible mate. It's better to wait and know it than to date and blow it. It's better to wait and know it than to date and blow it. How you get them is how you keep them. Yeah. Words of wisdom. What they are not, they always will be. What they are not, they always will be. Postpone possibilities until parents are perfectly pleased. If mom and daddy says no, no more questions. End of the story. I'll give you this, and I'll try to find a landing spot. Men always initiate, women respond. Now, I'm old-fashioned, okay? I go back to the 8-track days, okay? But it wasn't too many years ago that if a young man was interested in a young lady, he had to make the first move. He had to stick his neck out. He had to talk to her or to her father before he would ever get a chance to get close to her. Yeah. He had to put his cards on the table and let her know his interest in her and take the risk of being rejected. Now, they don't do that nowadays, do they? Because nowadays, the girl flirts with the boy, lets him know through back channels that she likes him, and so he talks to her friends to get reassurances before he talks to her, and she lets all her friends know that she thinks he's cute. That gives him the courage to finally approach her. That is not courage, that is cowardice. That's what that is. That's called being a coward. Because the bravest thing that a young man will ever do is talk to a pretty girl. You say, wait a minute, does that mean I have to take all the risk? Yes. Does that mean she can reject me and leave me twisting in the wind? You got it. Does that mean that I have to become vulnerable and she doesn't have to risk anything? Yes. Welcome to being a man. It has always been God's design that men lead and women respond. And if a young man, when it is time, cannot take the first step in initiating the relationship, he is Peter Pan is what he is. I'm ready for marriage. Amen. A young lady should never ask a young man out on a date. She should never leak her interest. In fact, while I'm here, I mean, I'm not in a hurry. When it is time for that date, you're 25, and you're picking her up, and you're going to go to dinner. And you say to her, where would you like to go? And she says, oh, I don't care, you decide. Guys, I'll give you some advice. Decide. Decide. Waffle House it is. But be a man and make a decision. Amen. Amen. You see, when a man fails in the role of leadership, then the woman is tempted to pick up the reins and to push him. If you have to do that in court, you're going to have to do it in marriage too. And a woman who takes the lead before the marriage sets a pattern for what takes place after the marriage. Amen. Amen. I'll give you one more. Go slow. Go slow. I've already talked to you about throwing out I love you. I know that it's romantic. I know that she wants to hear it. But a shallow, romantic infatuation is not love. You got to get beyond the swooning stage. You got to get beyond the puppy love to know if you really love somebody. Go slow. Stay pure. Stay pure. Stay pure. Lust is a terror to run with. It's not a toy to play with. Hey guys, let me help you tonight. Sitting in this room, we're all wearing our Sunday best, all got a Bible on our lap. And nobody knows what's in the secret recesses of your heart. But I'm not so naive as to think we're all holy. I'm not so naive as to think as there's not hidden sin. And I say tonight that if you are addicted to pornography, lust, movies, whatever it might be, and ladies, if you have a heart full of lust, it will take radical steps to break the addiction. If you have lived for years feeding that lust in your heart through the music, the things that you watch and the phone, the roots are so deeply intertwined, it will take radical steps to be set free. There seems to be a correlation in the Bible between food and sensual sin. Striking in the Bible, when you find men drinking and feasting, you also find lewd behavior. You find it at the drunken party of Artaxerxes. You find it at the drunken party of Belshazzar. You find it at the drunken party where Salome comes in. You think that what does this have to do with the subject? Fasting in the Bible is a Bible way of conquering sensual appetites. An impure heart is a spiritual problem. And the only solution to a spiritual problem has to be a spiritual solution. Fasting. Memorizing Scripture. Wherewithal shall the young man cleanse his way? By taking heed thereto according to his word. It takes radical steps. Flee youthful lust. The greatest way to overcome temptation is to avoid temptation. It is to make no provision for the flesh. Preacher, do you really think, do you really think it's wrong for us to hold hands? Well, the Bible says in 1 Corinthians 7 verse 1, it's good for a man to not touch a woman. I'll promise you this, if you'll get radical, and if you say we're not even going there, and if you won't even cross that line, I'll promise you won't cross the next line. I promise you won't cross the next line. I promise you that if you won't even cross that line, one day you'll walk to that marriage altar pure. Build accountable relationships. Several years ago, Promise Keepers was a big thing. There was an event where men filled stadiums and bonded. It never appealed to me to come to a stadium of 50,000 sweaty men and hold hands and confess to them. It just never got to me. But accountability is a way to build a fence around your life, is what it is. Godly friends, spiritual advisors that can help you in one of the most important areas of your life. Accountability on your computers and your phones. We're not getting rid of it. We live in a mobile age. It's too convenient. We're not getting rid of computers. We're not getting rid of phones. But you better have some accountability. Don't open the door to that temptation. Don't put any confidence in your flesh. And tonight, you have to check your heart. It is not your music that is the problem. It is the heart that wants it. It is not your friends that is the problem. It is the heart that wants to be with them. Hey lady, young lady, look at me. It's not your dress that's the problem. It is the heart that wants to dress like that. It is a spiritual problem is what it is. And if you don't surrender that life to God and everything that goes along with it, it's going to lead you down a path that you don't want to go. If you'll cut the live feed, and I'm looking. Had a lady visit our church recently. Hasn't been to our church for a long time. And I remember the last time she came, she left, her husband dragging her, and she left screaming. She left screaming at me. There were some things that she wouldn't hold to. It's a bad way to leave a church. Just recently she visited our church. I hadn't seen her in years and years. And I asked her, I said, hey, where's all the kids? She said, I don't know. I have nothing to do with me. Her and her husband in the middle of getting a divorce. And my heart breaks for her. My heart breaks for her. And I wish I could help her. But years ago, she took the preaching and left in a fit. And I'm not saying because that she disagreed with me, but she turned her heart against the teaching of the Word of God in this church. It's been nothing but tragedy. And if you could look 15, 20 years down the road at where you'll be, would you bow your heads with me tonight? I love our young people. They're the future of this church. They're the future of our country is what they are. And I want to see every one of them with zeal for God, wanting to live right, wanting to do right. We can put all of the rules on you and then some. What's in your heart tonight? I cannot change what is in your heart, but God can. With our heads bowed, eyes closed, several are on the altar. And I wonder if you'd come tonight. You don't even have to be young. You can be old. Say, Lord, I want to live for you. A pure, holy, godly life. That's what I want. Young children in your home, well, you better set some rules. Better set some rules now. Establish the guidelines now. Don't wait. Don't wait. Establish them now. I don't want to lose any of our young people. I don't want to lose any of them tonight. None of them. Did you come tonight? Did you come?